Gerry, welcome. Always a pleasure, my friend. Welcome back.
Steve, always a treat to talk with you. No matter how busy I am, I always make time for you, as you know.
And you are busy. With Mike McCarthy becomes the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, we know Western PA, all the roots, Super Bowl champion, the whole deal. Still, was it a surprise?
There were several things about it, Steve, that were a surprise to me, including the timing of the announcement. And by the timing, I mean it came sooner than I thought it would, because I thought that they would go through at least one more interview with one of the Rams assistants, if not two of them, because I know they were very impressed with Nate Shieldhouse.
Yeah.
I believe they thought he was too young, not in age, 35. I believe that's what his age was. But the fact he's only been in the league 2 years, he's never called a play. This is a kid, though, who's very impressive. And you're going to see, and I don't think it's going to be this year, but you're going to see in the next year, and no more than two, that he is going to be a hot commodity. But I don't think they were ready to pull that trigger. And, hey, it's possible Chris Shula, too. When you're a Sean McVay assistant and you're in the NFC Championship game and you are a bit of a commodity, I don't think the Steeler job was viewed as an attractive job to somebody in Chris Shula's position, a guy who, because he's a McVay guy, was going to get a job somewhere. And I say that because if you look at it, if you look at it a little bit pragmatically and you remove yourself from the situation, you look at the Steelers and it's an offense basically devoid of star power. It's an aging defense, and they don't have a quarterback. And if they do, it's a 42-year-old quarterback.
Right.
So when you look at that as a young coach, that's why I thought the best two jobs out there, Steve, were the Giants and the Falcons. Because the Giants, they have a young quarterback in place, Jackson Dart. Malik Neighbors, their number one pick 2 years ago, missed all of last year or most of it. Cam Scadaboo will be back. They have two good edge rushers. Yep. I think the Giants are the turnaround. I thought this before John Harbaugh. They're the turnaround team of 2026. And I thought the Falcons with Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Michael Penix, a young quarterback, and a couple good young players on defense. That was another attractive job. But I don't think the Steeler job was viewed that way in terms of personnel. And so I think what it required was a coach, was somebody like Mike McCarthy. Now, I say that, Steve, and what it is to me is it's another move, good or bad. But forget which one it is, but it's another move in line with what they've done with personnel the last 2 years. Look at what they've done. They bring in a lot of 30-something veterans. With what purpose? To try and win a playoff game. And to me, that's what they're doing with Mike McCarthy. It just goes right in line. Let's bring in a proven veteran coach, and let's try to win a playoff game now, because we can't keep affording not to win a playoff game. Now, we know they've been in the postseason, but they're not doing what they want to do, which is why they brought Aaron Rodgers in, which is why they brought Russell Wilson in. And that's what they're doing with bringing Mike McCarthy in. So there were elements of it that surprised me, but there were other elements, certainly in retrospect, that don't surprise me at all when you look at the way they have been kind of operating and trying to do what they want to do the last 2 seasons, and now 3.
Interesting you bring up Nathan Shieldhouse because I announced 3 of his games against Penn State because he was the quarterback in Illinois. When I get a chance, I'm going to ask Matt Campbell about him because he was on Matt Campbell's staff at Iowa State for 3 years, including being the offensive coordinator. So very interesting. You knew the Rodgers question had to come up based on past relationship with Mike McCarthy, and Mike said, "Hey, look, I'd like to have him back." Right, is there any general thought on a guy that's very difficult to read in Aaron Rodgers?
Well, first of all, Steve, I didn't think Mike McCarthy would say anything different one way or the other. Right. I mean, he's not going to sit there and say, "Well, I think we want to move on from Aaron Rodgers," or, right. I don't want Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I'd expect him to say, who wouldn't want him back.
Right.
But I think it's still a decision to be made because they know that at some point, and it's one of the reasons why they hired Mike McCarthy, because of his success with quarterbacks. But let's face it, too, Steve. Mike McCarthy's walked into some enviable positions. He walked in with Brett Favre and then Aaron Rodgers. And then he leaves there and he walks into Dak Prescott. That's not the case here.
Right.
And a 42-year-old Rodgers is not the same as the 22 or 23-year-old Rodgers he inherited. So, but the Steelers know they can't keep affording to go with these veteran quarterbacks on this one-year basis. What do they want to do? And go out and get another one, and then that'll be 6 years with 6 different starting quarterbacks in the season opener.
Right.
They don't want to do that either. They know that has to change. That has to stop. So, but bringing Aaron Rodgers back to me makes more sense than just bringing in another veteran quarterback.
Right.
And at some point in time, you're going to have to just draft that guy and go with him and see what he has. That's just the way it works in the NFL. If you're going to get the guy, you're gonna go play him. And they kind of had that idea when they drafted Kenny Pickett. They brought in Mitch Trubisky as the bridge quarterback. And Mitch Trubisky certainly no Aaron Rodgers, that's for sure. So I'll see how it plays out, but I don't think Mike McCarthy was not hired in any form to make it a package deal to get Aaron Rodgers back. That had nothing to do with it.
Right, exactly.
But we'll see if he does indeed come back, or more importantly, if they really want him to come back.
What's interesting about this is that all the winning seasons, which is a great accomplishment because you and I both know how hard it is to win in any league, including the NFL. But it's also put the Steelers in a position, especially the last 10 years, where the draft every year is somewhere in the 20s, 20 to 25. And it's not just being 20 to 25, as you and I both know, in the opening round. That's all everybody ever thinks about. That means that you're 56 to 60 in the second round. You get to the third round, you're in the 80s. And because they've been able to have enough success, they're not getting a premium draft choice. How difficult has this cycle been for the Steelers, and how difficult has it been to break out of it?
Yeah, well, there's only one way they're going to break out of it, and that, of course, is to lose.
Yeah, right.
And so that certainly isn't on their docket. They traded up a little bit. They got Broderick Jones at 16. They moved up 2 spots. They got Fautano, I think, at 18, I think was the number.
Yeah.
And Fautano especially is, he's probably a Pro Bowler in waiting. He's really good.
Yes.
But the problem is, Steve, with all their draft picks, their last 2 drafts haven't been too bad. I kind of like them.
Yeah.
But the problem is they don't hit home runs with their most recent drafts. They haven't drafted a Pro Bowl player. They haven't drafted a dominant player, a game-breaking player. George Pickens had that potential, but George Pickens had a lot of other issues that reared its head right away. He had him in Georgia. He had him here, and he's going to have him in Dallas. He's already had him.
Right.
So, but they haven't been able to draft those guys like they did before. And so, to me, the drafts are nice, but if you don't hit the home run, that's what all good drafts are predicated on. Did you get a game breaker? Did you get a Pro Bowler? Did you get that type of player? Some type of player around which you can build either your team or a unit or a position. And they haven't really been able to do that recently. And so, yeah, it's hard. You're not going to get that elite player. What you find those typically in first 5 picks of the draft, and they're never there. But that doesn't mean, because their history has shown, that they can't find those players in the first round, and they haven't gotten. Again, Fautano, I think, is going to be a special player.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you haven't found that kind of game-breaking type of player in the draft. And if they don't go after a quarterback, Steve, I don't think there's any question, especially now with Mike McCarthy, but regardless of who came in, you're going to see them take a wide receiver in the first round because they just don't have the quality. They don't have the quality depth there, and they just don't have the quality really outside of DK Metcalf. In today's NFL, you better have 3 or 4 good receivers. and the Steelers don't have that.
And the other part, too, is this is not a depth-heavy draft on quarterbacks. That's the other part.
That's right.
That's an important element to this. Did Mike indicate at all whether he wants to still be a play caller or will he hire a play caller?
Yeah, no, he even said that. And that, number of years ago in Green Bay, he relinquished the play calling duties to Tommy Clements, of all people, a former Canevin High School from here, local guy, for about 12 games. And then it wasn't working. And then so he took it back over and he said, I'll never do that again. And he's called the plays in Dallas. And he even said yesterday, no, he's going to call the plays. So, I don't even know that they'll bring a guy in with the title of offensive coordinator. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But Mike McCarthy's going to call the plays. And so that part's been settled. I think it's going to be obviously more curious who he's going to be able to bring in as a defense coordinator.
Let me ask you, going into the cycle here, combine, then free agency, and then the draft. Where are the Steelers, in your opinion, in good shape, Gerry, where it doesn't really have to be a consideration?
Well, where they are, the best spot, Steve, is the amount of draft picks they have in the first 3 rounds. And that was all part, and, they've kind of intimated this publicly, that, part of that, of the stockpiling of those draft picks in the top 3 rounds with compensatory picks, is being able to make some, is to package some picks and make a deal to possibly move up in the draft. And so that's where their strength is in terms of what they want to do. They've spent a lot of money the last 2 years, when you look at, absorbing Jalen Ramsey's contract, absorbing Jonnu Smith's contract, getting, trading for DK Metcalf, and in my opinion, overpaying him, but nonetheless, $150 million over 5 years. That's a lot of money for a guy who, to me, is a very good number 2 wide receiver, but not a true number 1 game-breaking receiver. I know we've seen glimpses. Don't get me wrong. I think he can be a big-time threat, but he's not Justin Jefferson. He's not Jamar Chase. He's not that type of wide receiver. So they have spent money, and they have 5 guys on their defense. The top 5 guys on their payroll are all on defense, and they're all have a cap hit of at least $17 million. No other team in the league has 5 defensive players with cap hits of at least $15 million, and that includes Cam Hayward, who's going to be 37 this year, and he did play well again at age 36. Probably, he's a Pro Bowl type of player still. So, they finances. They've been, they're the best at managing the cap. That really hasn't been a problem. This idea that the Steelers don't pay and they're cheap is totally ridiculous, because they do. Their defense is proof of that. But they might have to make some. They've been able to get away with it because they haven't had to pay the quarterback these last 5 years, and that's what cripples a lot of salary caps with the teams who have top tier quarterbacks. Who are under $200 million contracts. Steelers don't have that, and so. In fact, they have one of the cheapest offenses in the league, or least expensive, and they're able to get away with paying it on defense. But that's where they're going to have to make some changes offensively. But most of their offensive line is on their rookie contracts. They're a couple of their wide receivers are on rookie contracts. Their running backs come cheap. $5 million and $2 million, not even $2 million. So that's where it's going to have to be bolstered on this team, is they're going to have to spend money offensively, Steve.
Right. In fact, if a quarterback is 12% of the cap, people will be shocked at how little success they've actually had in the playoffs. It's stunning, because you can't build the rest of the team because you threw so much money into one guy.
Right.
I do have to ask you about the Belichick thing. How surprised were you that the word got out that first time through he didn't get in?
Well, Steve, I don't know if you know this or not, but I am a member of the selection committee.
Oh, okay. Then I need to back off on that, because you can't really reveal it.
I can. I don't. I choose not to.
Yeah.
I don't think I should. only because,
Fair.
the discussion and the votes are supposed to be private.
Yep.
And now that it's out there, I'm not just going to all of a sudden pile on and say how I voted. But I will tell you this, because sitting in on the discussion on that 8-hour meeting a couple weeks ago, I couldn't believe what I was hearing from some people. And I think even the guy who presented him made a joke and said, when it came up for Bill Belichick, he came up and he says, Bill Belichick, okay, I'm done. And that's all he needed to do in terms of presenting him to the selection committee. Because to me, it doesn't need discussion. But it turned into a discussion. And it turned into a discussion with what you were reading about. And if I'm Bill Polian, I would be upset that what he said came out.
Yep.
And the way he's being portrayed in this. Now, I believe I read where he said today that he voted for Bill Belichick. So what I'm saying, Steve, is I'm not going to tell you how I voted, but I think what I tell you here will indicate how I voted, which I think it's an embarrassment to the Hall and to the selection committee if, in fact, Bill Belichick doesn't get in, which is what it appears. And to me, it's, if one of the greatest coaches with the most Super Bowl titles in the history of the league doesn't get in on a first ballot, to me, it's disgraceful and it's embarrassing. And so I don't care about some of the things they brought up. Look, the Deflategate. I believe Belichick wasn't even involved in Deflategate, and I get the Spygate thing, and he was punished for it by the league. But it wasn't like he was thrown out of the league. He paid a fine, and that was his punishment. And so to hold that against him, Steve, one of the things we talk about in the Hall of Fame, in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, is it's what they do on the field. What they do off the field is not supposed to come into the discussion at all. Yeah. In fact, when guys have brought up things that occur off the field, they are stopped during their presentation and they say, we're not concerned. We don't deal with what they do off the field. We only deal with what they do on the field. Well, if that is the case, and I understand voters, they're all human. They're all going to have their personal gripes or whatever it is. But see, to me, with Belichick, the people who didn't vote for him, now I know there's different reasons why some people don't. There are several things that play into this, Steve, and I hope I'm not going on too long with this answer. But some people in this voting process think, well, look, Belichick's going to get in. And so there's a couple other guys that I feel I'm going to try and get in. And so I'm not going to vote for Bill because he's going to get in, so I'm going to vote for these guys. And I'm sure that can happen too. Yeah. But I think what's in play here is the people who were petty enough and jealous enough or just didn't like Belichick personally because of what they viewed his personality to be. And that should have nothing to do with it. And to me, like I said, it's an embarrassment. And if to the Hall and to the committee, if he doesn't get in.
Well, I appreciate the fact you answered it, and I did not in any way, shape, or form, because I vote for things as well, and I can't reveal what I'm doing till after the fact. But I'm glad you were able to at least give us some perspective on that, because I sat back and went, "You got to be kidding me!" Okay, but when
I saw the headline, that was my first well, first of all, I'm stunned that it got out, and apparently, according to the story, it was somebody associated with the Hall of Fame, because we don't know, and I won't know until the morning of the show, that the NFL Honors. Yep. They'll let us know, but we're not allowed to say until it comes out on the show. But we don't find that they are so protective now because of their television show that we don't know. I don't know who the modern era winners. I don't know because they don't tell us. Right. But I'll find out. The morning of the show. It used to be they would tell us an hour before the show came on, because they're so protective of not leaks not getting out. But according to that story yesterday, it was somebody from the Hall of Fame wow. who has knowledge of the voting that leaked it out, and then of course other people on the committee then helped leak it out even further. And and that's it's not the greatest crime in the world. But it's just, this is what they talk about. It's what they ask us. And nobody ever seems to really honor it anymore. Somebody always lets it out.
That's why I can talk to you. You'll honor it, and that's important. Hey, Gerry, thanks so much for all the perspective. I mean, on every single topic today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.